Good morning, Morai v'Rabotai, Beruchim Habayim. We are continuing on Masechet Succah, and we are on Daf Chaf Bet, Amud Bet, 7 lines up from the bottom of the Amud, starting a new Mishnah. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zchut Refuah Shelema for Rachel Simcha Bat Nahit, that should have full recovery, Refuah Shelema B'ezrat Hashem, Amen.
Amen.
Also for Refuah Shelema of Esther Bracha Bat Chaya, that should have full recovery.
Amen.
For Nisim Ben Miriam's Refuah Shelema, and for the zchut of everyone that has been affected by the wildfires in our community. Be'ezrat Hashem, they should all be safe, and for the fires to be gone. Be'ezrat Hashem, Hayom, today, in Mr. Hashem, Amen.
Amen.
This month's learning of the community has been graciously dedicated by the Shei family, by Dayan family, by Kohen families. Should be ultimate zchut for all their mishpachot. Be'ezrat Hashem, Amen.
Amen.
Okay, exciting stuff. You're starting a new Mishnah in the discussion continuing of what type of sukkah is kasher and what type is not, and as exotic stuff that we're going to discuss today. We had a quick peek in the Shita of Rashbag, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, whether or not a sukkah that's on top of an agala is kasher or not. What about if it's sitting on top of a behemah? It's all tucked away over here in our Mishnah Chaf Bet Amud Bet. Says the Mishnah, Ha'oseh sukkato berosh ha'agala or berosh ha'sfina. If you make your sukkah on top of a carriage, top of a wagon, or on top of a sfina, a ship, keshera, it's kasher. Not only that, olin la b'yom tov, you could get on it on Yom Tov as well. There's no problem going on top of an agala on Yom Tov, on top of a sfina on Yom Tov. So therefore, it's kasher halachically, and you could also use it on Yom Tov. Now, what is the question? Why do you even have to mention this? The discussion that we discussed before is, if you need a dirat keva, if you need something that does not move, so then it's a question if the wagon is something that's dirat keva or not. Afal gav de mitaltela velo kvia, says Rashi, even though that this is a moving object, a agala is on the move, a carriage moves, a sfina moves, and still with that said, is considered a set dira and is kasher for sukkah. Now, by sfina is an added element of the winds, because when you're open from all sides in the middle of the ocean, the amount of wind that you get is way more than a regular settlement, a regular place in a residential area that is surrounded by houses and hilltops and mountains and so on. So you have naturally much stronger winds, which would cause a machloket, as we will see in our Gemara. But the Mishnah clearly says, on top of sfina, kasher. On top of agala, kasher. You could even go on it on Yom Tov. Fine. Continues the Mishnah, if you make it berosh ilan, if you make not a tree house, but a tree sukkah, you create a sukkah with, of course you have to have all the hechsher, 3 walls, and the leaves of the tree are not there. There's nothing that blocks your schach, so to speak. You cared about checking all the boxes of the halachot, details of the halachot of the sukkah, but at the end of the day, my sukkah is built on top of a tree. Is it kasher or not? What's the question? Yeah. Says the Mishnah, if you build your sukkah on top of a tree, or on top of a camel, al gabe gamal, then the sukkah is kasher, right? Provided that you checked all the boxes of the requirements for sukkah, ve'en olin la b'yom tov. But it's asur to use it on Yom Tov. You can't go on it on Yom Tov. Why not? Because the Gemara says in Masechet Betzah, Daf Lamed Vav, that Chazal made a prohibition, it's midrabanan, that you cannot climb on a tree or climb on an animal. You can't even use them. You can't even use a tree. Imagine if you have a basket that is hanging on a branch, directly on a branch. Can you put something on that basket on Shabbat? You can't. If it's already 2 steps down, fine. So that's mutar. If you have a hook and then you have something hanging up, by the way, this creates a real question for those people who have swing sets that is directly attached to the branches of the tree. They should ask their local Orthodox rabbi and Moreh Hora'ah whether or not their swing set is kasher to be used on Shabbat or not. But you cannot move a tree, you cannot sit on a tree, you cannot climb on a tree. And the reason is because once you go on a tree, you may come to take off some branches, some leaves. It becomes a problem. Same is with an animal. If you are riding an animal, right, for those who have their PhD in animal riding, you know that sometimes you need a little branch to direct the animal. After all, it's an animal. So you may come to, as you're passing by a tree, you may come to take a zmora, a little branch, and it would not be even on your mind because that's the natural thing. That would therefore Chazal banned usage of animals and trees on Shabbat and Yom Tov. Hence, if you have your sukkah that's kasher lemehadrin min ha'mardirin, and you built it on top of a tree, or you structured it on top of an animal, an elephant, a camel, it's beautiful. You can use it the rest of the sukkah, the rest of the chag, but on Yom Tov itself, you cannot go on top of that sukkah.
So tree houses are not allowed on Shabbat?
Good. That's what we got to discuss. Yes, tree houses would be a question on Shabbat. Exactly. So says the Gemara. Now, shtayim be'ilan ve'achat bidei adam. If you have 2 of the walls of the sukkah that are supported by the ilan, by the tree, and one of them is bidei adam, the other one is fully standing, built and structured by human beings, standing on its own, supported from the bottom. The tree is not supporting that one wall. Or the other way around, shtayim bidei adam. Even if you have 2 that are supported by themselves, that are handmade, not relying on the tree, ve'achat bidei adam, and only one of the walls of the sukkah are be'ilan, are supported by the tree, still keshera, but still en olin la b'yom tov. Of course, it's going to be kasher, but still you cannot use it on Yom Tov. Why can't you use it on Yom Tov? Because the same reason, because your sukkah is not kasher without the use of that wall. A sukkah needs 3 walls. One of the walls is using the tree. Doesn't go after the majority. Your sukkah cannot be using any of the tree for its hechsher. And hence, says the Mishnah, Shalosh bidei adam v'achat be'ilan. If you have 3 walls that are made supporting themselves, not relying on the tree, and you decided to have a 4th one. You don't need a 4th one, right? Fine. You decide to have 4 walls, and the 4th one is relying on the ilan, is built in the ilan. Yom Tov. Then it's kasher, and not only it's kasher, you could actually go on it on Yom Tov. Ze hakelal. This is the rule of thumb, says our Mishnah. Kol shinatel ha'ilan v'yechola la'amod bifnei atzma. If you would take the ilan out of the picture, imagine if you would be able to just take the ilan, make it go away and evaporate. Would your sukkah stand? Would it be usable? If it would be usable, says the Mishnah, then it's kasher. If the sukkah could stand without the ilan even being there, then it's kasher, and you could use it on Yom Tov. Anything short of that, you cannot use it on Yom Tov, but of course it is kasher during the course of Chol HaMoed, during the course of the Chag.
Would Rava say that it's not okay because he says that a wall can't be over 20? Like, let's say the tree was over 20 amma.
Well, that's from the bottom of where you sit in the sukkah. If you make your sukkah on top of a high-rise, on the rooftop of Empire State Building, your sukkah is kasher because from where you sit until the schach is now 20 amot.
The supporting, you said like that.
Support doesn't matter. It's the ground of the sukkah that matters. The ground of the sukkah here starts on top of the tree. So that would be fine as long as from the floor of your sukkah until the ceiling is not 20 amot. Says the Gemara, Mani Matne, who is the Tana of our Mishnah? Who is the Tana of our Mishnah? Rabbi Akiva. It's not agreeable by everyone. It's Rabbi Akiva that says that is kasher. Why? Because we learned in the Braita the Machloket Rabbi Akiva and Rabban Gamliel, and a very humorous story actually is associated with this in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, the Tanya, we learned in our Braita, Haoseh Sukkato Berosh Asfina, if you make your sukkah on top of a ship on the sea, Rabban Gamliel posel, Rabban Gamliel holds is asur, is pasul, Rabbi Akiva machshir. Rabbi Akiva says is kasher. Rabban Gamliel Rabbi Akiva shayu ba'in b'sfina. We have a lot of times in Shas that Rabbi Akiva and Rabban Gamliel are traveling in the sea. This is a whole different thing that we spoke about at Sheba Rabbi Akiva, where Rabbi Akiva is, you find him in multiple different cities, completely separate from one another. He was a traveling agent. You see that many times. Rabbi Akiva came to this place, Rabbi Akiva came to that place, at Sheba Rabbi Akiva. So no surprise that he was on a ship with Rabban Gamliel, and he built his sukkah according to his shita, right? He built his sukkah according to his shita, a regular sukkah, as we'll see in the Gemara. Amad Rabbi Akiva v'asa sukkah berosh hasfina. He built the sukkah mamash on the deck of the sfina, of the ship, lemachar. Right? He had a beautiful Yom Tov night, amazing. Tomorrow morning, he wakes up, he sees that not only you could see the stars, but you could see the whole sky. The sukkah is gone, right? I never forget, we had in Baltimore, we lived in a place that 80% were from Jews, and the apartment buildings were like a massive U shape around, and in the middle was a very large courtyard, greenery, beautiful, and everyone had made sukkot, maybe 15, 20 sukkahs in the middle of this courtyard, and we all went to sleep at night, and in the morning, like half the sukkahs were like 15 feet away. They were all like taken off by the wind, a strong wind that circulated inside the U. Was crazy winds back in that year. I think mine was still standing, but it needed some TLC afterwards. So on top of a sfina, you have strong winds. So Rabbi Akiva wakes up in the morning. There's no sukkah to be had, right? So Rabban Gamliel comes and gives him a very direct message over here. Says Rabban Gamliel, Akiva hechan sukkatcha. Where is your sukkah, Akiva? What happened to the sukkah? Of course, he was saying to him what he holds, that's exactly why I hold it's pasul, because it's not omed beruach, it's not withstanding the winds. You need a different type of sukkah. So says Abaye, Amar Abaye, the kula alma hecha de ena lechola laamod beruach mitzuyad yabasha lo klumu. Everybody agrees that if the sukkah cannot withstand the regular daily winds of the yabasha, of a regular area, a residential area, if you can't withstand the regular wind, your sukkah is pasul. Right? Lo klumi. It's not worth anything. It's pasul. Even according to Rabbi Akiva, it's pasul. Yechola lamod b'she'ena metzuyad yabasha kule alma lo peligide kashera. And if you built a sukkah that could weather a storm on the sea, that also everyone agrees that is kasher. If you mamash made it that the walls are attached to the deck of the sukkah, there's no flying away, and your schach is tied down by something that is kasher to tie down your sukkah with, so it's not going anywhere. You could have kol ruchot sheba'olam noshvim bo. All the winds could come and the sukkah and the schach is going to stand. Then, says Abaye, well, Rabbi Gamliel also holds his kasher. Indeed, some of the Achorim write that that's exactly what Rabbi Gamliel did. He built his sukkah, not on the deck, but on the bottom area, and he tightened it and secured it to the walls of the side of the ship, and he had a sukkah. But the machlok of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Gamliel says Abaye is ki peligi b'di yechola la'amod beruach metzuyad yabasha ve'ena yechola la'amod beruach she'ena metzuyad yabasha. The machloket is if the sukkah can weather a regular wind that you would have on land, but it cannot withstand an irregular, a strong wind of land. So therefore, Rabbi Akiva says, well, a sukkah needs to be able to stand in a regular wind of Yabasha. Even if you build it on top of a tall building, it still goes after a regular halachot of sukkah. And therefore it will be kasher. Well, if you get unlucky and a ruach she'ena mitzuyah comes, so then, okay, so you build again another sukkah. So therefore you could build a sukkah that could withstand a wind of yabasha, of land, on top of the deck of your ship. And if you get lucky that the sukkah is not blown away, you're kasher. Rabbi Gamliel says no. You have to go based on, well, ruach she'ena mitzuyah. If the sukkah you're building on a ship, the ruach mitzuyah of the ship is much stronger than a ruach mitzuyah of yabasha, so you have to deal with the ruach mitzuyah of where you are. So therefore, it has to withstand ruach she'ena mitzuyah of the land, which is the regular, normal wind on a ship, on the deck of a ship. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Gamliel Savar, Sukkah Dirat Keva Bainan. It's an good old machloket of whether or not Sukkah Dirat Keva Bainan or Sukkah Dirat Arai Bainan. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Gamliel is the one that holds Sukkah Dirat Keva Bainan. וכיוון דאינה יכולה לעמוד ברוח מצויה לים לא כלום הוא. It's not considered a kosher sukkah because it can't withstand the regular wind of the sea. ורבי עקיבא סבר, סוכה דירת ארעי בעינן, sukkah needs to only be a dirat arai. Then therefore, as soon as it is strong enough to stand the winds of the Yabasha, it's kasher. Keva de yechola la'amod beruach mitzuyah de Yabasha, keshera. Now, you still need to get lucky for your sukkah not to be blown away in the wind. But if you get lucky, the sukkah is kasher. Whereas, Rabbi Gamliel would say, even if you got lucky, the sukkah you sat in is pasul, the bracha you said is bracha lebatala. That's not how you build a sukkah on a deck of a ship. Says the Gemara, so we said in the Mishnah that if you happen to build your sukkah on top of a camel, it's kasher, you can't go on it on Yom Tov. So says the Gemara, matnitin mani Rabbi Meiri. This is also not agreeable by everybody. It's actually machloket Tanaim between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. What's the machloket? The Tanya, we learned in Braita, how says sukato al gabe bema, if you build your sukkah, structure it on top of an animal, on top of a camel, on top of an elephant, Rabbi Meir machshir, Rabbi Meir says it's kasher, because that's our Mishnah. The Rabbi Yehuda pasel, Rabbi Yehuda says it's pasul. Now, this is very intriguing because we all know Rabbi Meir v'chavero, halakha k'chavero. Rabbi Yehuda v'chavero, halakha k'Rabbi Yehuda v'chavero, right? So, what is exactly the reason of Rabbi Yehuda? My Talmud Rabbi Yehuda, says the Gemara, Amar Kra, because the pasuk says Chag HaSukkot, the good old pasuk that we've learned so much from. Chag HaSukkot ta'aseh lecha shiv'at yamim. Build a sukkah for how many days? 7 days. Well, it's not the only time that I know Chag HaSukkot is 7 days. I know Chag HaSukkot is 7 days. So why in the world do you have to tell me Chag HaSukkot ta'aseh, build, make Sukkah for 7 days? Says the Gemara, Sukkah ruya l'shiv'a sheba Sukkah. Only a Sukkah that is befitting for a usage of 7 days of the entire Chag is a Sukkah. Sukkah she'eina ruya l'shiv'a lo shebeh Sukkah. A Sukkah that cannot be used for 7 consecutive days of Yom Tov is nish a Sukkah. It's not a Sukkah. So says the Gemara. Now, by the way, why is this a problem? Because when can you not use this Sukkah? On Yom Tov. Can you go on top of the Sukkah that's on top of my animal? We just said the Gemara in Masechet Succah that Chazal made the Gezerah, you cannot use anything that's on an animal. So can I use this on Yom Tov? No. Shabbat Chol HaMoed? No. Yom Tov Acharon? No. Right? Chol HaMoed, Chazak u'Baruch. Right? You can do that on Chol HaMoed. But that's not Shivat Yamim. Says Rabbi Yehuda, I need a Sukkah that could be used every single day of the Chag. This Sukkah cannot be used because I can't go on it. Pasul. Right? But Rabbi Meir has to deal with this as well. So Rabbi Meir says, Hanami mideoraita michsach. This is, come on. Mideoraita. Mideoraita. Can I come on top of this Sukkah on Yom Tov? Absolutely yes. What's the problem? You know how amazing it is to go on an elephant and tour the town as you're sitting in your Sukkah on top of it? It's amazing, right? Pretty exotic. That's what the Persians would do in Long Island, probably, right? Some bar mitzvah bacher entered on an elephant. So you have a Sukkah. Midoraita is kasher. The problem is midrabanan. Midrabanan, Chazal banned this. But that doesn't render the Sukkah not kasher because Chag HaSukkot ta'aslecha shivat yamim. Midoraita shivat yamim, this is good. It's not rendered pasul because on Yom Tov midarabanan you have a gezerah, you're worried that you're going to come to cut a branch, therefore you cannot go on top of it. That does not render the sukkah pasul. V'rabanan hu de gazur be. Fine, so that is the machloket Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Now, how about if I use an animal not for support of the sukkah but as a wall, right? Now, in Masechet Baba Metzia, Daf Lamed Bet, there's a whole sugya there of Sar Ba'alei Chaim, right? Sar Ba'alei Chaim, we are the first advocates of animal rights in the world. The psak of the maskana of the Gemara there is Sar Ba'alei Chaim, the oraita, inflicting pain on animals if it's not for legitimate reasons is considered the oraita. But here, imagine if you don't have any other wall, you need to sit in the sukkahs. That's not Sar Ba'alei Chaim. Actually, the Nodab Yehuda, Rabbi Yecheskel Landa Alav Shalom, or the Gdolei Achronim of the Ashkenazi Jewry, he was asked by one of his Baalei Batim, a rich Baalei Batim back in the day, their fun was they would go hunting. Right? They had hunting dogs and hunting areas and a whole shebang. So someone asked him, he said, hunting, mutar or asur? So says Nodab Yehuda, well, it's not bal tashchit because using something, wasting something that's usable could potentially be a full-fledged yisur d'oraita, right? Wasting is a big problem. So it says the Nodab Yehuda, when you shoot an animal, it's tarif, you can't eat it anymore. You get the dogs, you waste it, whatever it is, right? So maybe it's sar ba'achai, maybe it is considered bal tashchit. Says the Nodab Yehuda, if it's done for recreational purposes of human beings, it's considered also, it's not necessarily Bal Tashchit. Says the Nodab Yehuda, same is really with Sar Ba'alei Chaim, if it's considered for a need of a human being, so maybe it is not considered a Sar Ba'alei Chaim either, and then he says a very massive chidush. Says the Nodab Yehuda, by the way, this is not going to be Sar Ba'alei Chaim anyways, because Sar Ba'alei Chaim is only when I keep the animal alive and I'm inflicting pain on them. But if I, in process of killing it, inflict some pain on it, that's not Sar Ba'alei Chaim. I'm killing it. So I kill it like this, I kill it like that. Doesn't make a difference. You kill it. If in process of the killing you have some pain, that's not considered Sar Ba'alei Chaim. That's what he says. Then, before I get back to this point, no, that says as the end says, but you shouldn't do it. You know why? Because it's bitul Torah. What are you doing going hunting? Learn Amud Yomi. Like, what are you doing? That's not a Jewish activity. That's for Esav, right? He was Ish Said, Ish Yodea Said, Ish Sadeh. Yaakov is Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim. It's waste of resources, waste of time. What are you doing going hunting? Sit and learn. That's what he says, right? But if you could make a little ha'ara that I had on the Nodab Yehuda, this is actually brought in his Tshuvot, Nodab Yehuda Tinyana, in Yoredea, Siman Yud, and it's brought also in Pitchet Shua, in Yoredea, in Siman Yudchet, I think, Kafchet. The Nodab Yehuda is a very big chidush, because Sefer HaChinuch, which is one of the Rishonim, he writes that the reason behind Shchita, we have a mitzvah of Shchita, right? V'zavachta kasher siviticha ish shecht, as I have commanded you, the way I have commanded you. And we know we need a sakin that's chad v'chalak. Have any of you have seen the knife of Shchita? It is so smooth and so super razor sharp. So why does it have to be like that? Says Sefer HaChinuch, because Sar Bal Chaim is the Oraita. That's why Shechita has to be done with such a sharp, and not just sharp, but smooth, that the animal doesn't even feel it. Right? You are minimizing, this is not the time for it right now, but in the early 1900s, also in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s even, in different places in the world, in America, in Sweden, other places in Europe, they tried to do a shechita ban because they felt it's not humane. They had this PETA people, promote videos that are show that the cows are in pain. They actually did a thing in America, and it turned out that the way they do it with this metal bullet that goes in and out is actually thousands of times more inhumane than this, because this shechita cuts the blood source, and in 3 seconds the animal basically is completely numb. It's like sleeping, and all the movements that you see is a natural reflex. Again, that's for a different talk, but nevertheless, says the Sefer HaChinuch, the reason you have to do it like that is because of Sabach. So you see that even in process of killing an animal, there is still Sar Ba'al Chaim. But again, he does say that if humans need it for a mitzvah, for something, that's considered, of course, not Sar Ba'al Chaim. So hence our Gemara. You need a wall, you need to sit in the sukkah. You only have 2 walls. So you want to bring your cow and stand it for the third wall. You say, be a good boy, stand here, right? Until I'm done with my sukkah. So what's the halacha? Says the Gemara, right?
Training academy for this.
Exactly. Rabbi Meir posel Rabbi Yehuda machshir. Rabbi Meir says it's pasul. Rabbi Yehuda says no. What's the problem? Kasher. Shaya Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir said, "Kol davar shesh bo ruach chaim." Rabbi Meir holds that any living being cannot be a dofan lesukkah, right? Any animal cannot be a dofan. A bunch of things it can't be. It can't be a dofan lesukkah, lo dofan lesukkah, velo lechi lamaboy. You can't use it as a lechi, as a reminder by the maboy that we spoke about last time, that you need to have like a post attached to the wall of the alleyway that opens to the Shut HaRabim. You can't have an animal affixed to the wall for the period of Shabbat, to have it as a lechi. Velo pasin lebiraot. We had paseh biraot that on Shabbat for the pilgrimage, when they came, they needed water, so they had wells, but the well's in the middle of nowhere. It's in how can you draw water from the well, which is considered the Shut HaYachid, to outside the well, which is the Shut HaRabim? So you remember we mentioned they had this tikkun of paseh biraot, that are 4 edges. If you had this well in the middle, so on the 4 sides you would have L-shaped walls on the corners only, and that L shape, each one extended, is considered like a wall. So you can't put an animal as one of the paseh biraot, says Rabbi Meir, because again, the same halacha, a livestock cannot be used for a wall of sukkah, for a wall of paseh biraot, for a lechi, considered a post, for a roof of a maboy, of an alleyway. None of those things could be used. And also, lo golel lekever. This is machlokes Rashi and Tosafot. Basically means it's not considered a cover for a coffin. That if the animal is sitting covering the coffin, it does not become tameh. And says the Gemara, Mishum Rabbi Yossi HaGalili Amru, in the name of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, they said, Af ein kotfin alav gite nashim. You also cannot give a get to your wife and an animals. That means you want to be very creative and artistic. You hire an artist to write a whole get on an exotic animal, and you give the animal to your wife as a birthday gift, thereby divorcing her. You cannot do that either, because it's a livestock. So says the Gemara, my Tamad Rabbi Meir. What's the reason of Rabbi Meir? Abaye says, Shema Tamut. Abaye says, because maybe it's going to die. So what kind of wall of sukkah is going to be if it's going to die in the middle? Right? You're in the middle of hamotzi, you're eating your kazayit, and the animal has a heart attack, and then your sukkah is pasul, right? Rabbi Zera says, no, Shema Tivrach. Maybe it's going to run away. Now the Gemara is going to go through all of this scenarios in which you're tying down the animal, or you bring an elephant, or all the other interesting variations of where it can be kasher, when it can't be kasher, which Bezat Hashem will discuss in the days to come.
Great share.